entered your destination.
Welcome back to Destination Pro Wrestling here on YouTube. My name is Tony, and you guys can follow me on Twitter at Tango with Tango, as always. And don't forget, we launched DPW Champions for $4.99 a month. You guys could click join, get some cool perks for being a valued subscriber. Think of it like a rewards program for those supporting the channel. Now, with that being said, today we had this awesome interview that came out on YouTube by YouTuber Chris Van Vliet. And if you don't know who he is, he's done a lot of fantastic interviews online with like John Cena and, honestly, there's so many people. But one person significantly that was really an important interview was Tony Khan. If you guys don't know who Tony Khan is by now, he is the CEO and president of All Elite Wrestling. Now, this interview was a wonderful interview because Tony Khan really opened up on a lot of specifics, such as like his 5-year plan, such as, TV deal, and all these different things that fans have been wanting to know. And one of the things that kind of got brought up was CM Punk, as well as AEW Championships, as well as the schedule. So I kind of want to do like a recap for you guys, give you my perspective on what was talked about in this interview, and then as always, make sure you guys leave a comment down below and tell me what you guys think. So let's jump into the schedule, because this is something that's been highly touted since the origin of AEW, since the very, very beginning, since AEW has come out. AEW had come out with huge ambitions in regards to allowing their stars work less. And it was very interesting, but Tony Khan kind of elaborated on that today, in which he said that the AEW schedule will be very wrestler friendly. And there's something I want to take away from this part, so make sure you guys watch this video entirely, because this is actually really interesting, because we haven't really heard much about this. But AEW's president and CEO, Tony Khan, had to say this: "For us, I want to offer a quality of life and a work-life balance that is the best and is unparalleled in the business for the best quality of life. What that means is less time on the road, but still working regularly, still performing on pay-per-view, on television in the future. I believe you don't need to spend 6 days on the road to make a good living as a wrestler, or even 5 days on the road per week necessarily." Now, it's very interesting that he brings this up, because there has been zero mention of AEW having a touring house show schedule. So as you can imagine, with this being said by Tony Khan, obviously we know that we're always going to have a lighter schedule. We always knew that was going to be one of the benefits to AEW, but he makes it very clear in this scenario that really their wrestlers are going to be doing some media stuff and some wrestling. But when they're wrestling and they're doing these things, it's going to be very little throughout the week. And the reason for that is because they're expected to working live television as well as pay-per-view. So obviously now it kind of popped up in my head, what about house shows? Now originally when AEW came out, they had talked about being a touring brand similar to WWE. Now, as you guys know, Impact Wrestling no longer does house shows anymore. So this is a really, really interesting thought process for AEW, and I kind of am curious as to how this fits their business plan, because for the next 5 years, AEW is looking at becoming the most recognized pro wrestling company. They are looking to do very, very big things within 5 years, and I thought for sure that touring and having live shows would be a big part of that, especially because if you do want to go to a live pro wrestling show, pretty much in the United States, you have just Ring of Honor, WWE, and some of the independents. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but being that Impact Wrestling was typically regarded as the number 2 pro wrestling company in the US, it's very interesting that AEW might be following Impact in a very similar way. Now, AEW is expected to do live television. That is something that Tony Khan and the team has said before, whereas Impact Wrestling does tapings, 2, 3, 4 months at a time. So it's a very, very interesting dynamic. But of course, if you are Tony Khan, maybe you're choosing your words a little too carefully here. And obviously, we haven't really heard much about the health insurance and stuff like that. So in this case, having a lighter schedule for the wrestlers, I get it, I respect it, I love it. But of course, as a pro wrestling fan, I do want to see them go on tour, especially, if they could come to Detroit, go to, Grand Rapids, go to New York, go to Chicago, go to Seattle. I mean, there's so many places in the United States that are very big for pro wrestling. I know Detroit's obviously a big market as well. So we would like to see them come to Detroit for more than just TV. Obviously, house shows could be pretty exciting too. And on top of that, tickets aren't as expensive. Now, with that being said, the fact that Tony Khan talked about this was really, really interesting because, they really haven't elaborated too much on what their schedule would be like. So the fact that it looks like they're limiting this to TV and pay-per-view, I mean, it's kind of weird. I'm not going to lie. It's kind of weird. But this was a really cool thing because, as you can imagine, with AEW becoming the new company, becoming the startup, Tony Khan's interview skills were really good. And what I mean by that is he's being very careful on what he's going to say. So he talked about TV deal. He wouldn't elaborate if it's a streaming, if it's cable, but he's been doing a lot of the back end stuff. And if you guys didn't know, Tony Khan also confirmed 100% that he makes all final decisions for AEW, which is why the next part about CM Punk is absolutely incredibly interesting. So for those who don't know, a report came out that Dave Meltzer had talked about this whole thing on the Wrestling Observer Radio, basically about how Tony Khan's first original person to come out to AEW, that was going to be the first guy, instead of Cody or Kenny or any of those, the Young Bucks. Tony Khan's original vision was CM Punk. And obviously, as many of you guys know, CM Punk really isn't doing the wrestling thing anymore. We know that he just returned at an indie event, which we'll kind of get to that in just a second. But it's very interesting considering that Tony Khan did originally want CM Punk first. Now, Tony Khan really dodged the question here because Chris Van Vliet said, hey, could CM Punk sign with AEW, especially now that we've seen him on this indie show? And right away, Tony Khan says he is a great talent and a great performer. I don't know if that was Phil in the ring, but he's great. I'm from Illinois, and I grew up around Chicago sports, and he's obviously very popular there. Now, if you look at his facial expressions as he says these words, it's very, very interesting. It sounds like he knows something that we don't know. Now, I'm not going to be the first one to tell you guys that CM Punk is going to AEW because after so many times, CM Punk has actually said that he's not going to be at AEW. But of course, now that this clip surfaced on the internet with CM Punk hitting a GTS at the local wrestling event in Wisconsin, it sounds like there is a slight possibility that CM Punk might want to get back into wrestling. Now, if he does get back into wrestling, one of the things that we do absolutely have to consider is if he does sign with AEW, how long is it going to be? Is it a lighter, There's a lot of what ifs. There's a lot of elements that go into that, but it is not absolutely surprising that Tony Khan is still a fan of him and still wanted him to be part of AEW. Now, while this interview took place, he mentions a lot of things about Double or Nothing as far as the production value, as far as some of the elements that will be, part of not only their pay-per-views, but their shows. But he said that there is going to be some major surprises for Double or Nothing. And as some of you guys may have pointed out in the descriptions, in the comments, and the Twitters and social medias and everything, a lot of people have come out and said, AEW's Double or Nothing card feels like it's missing something. And I feel like after this interview, Tony Khan could be alluding to a very, very special surprise. And I'm not saying CM Punk is going to show up at Double or Nothing, but if there is ever a time for CM Punk to come back into pro wrestling, let alone any wrestling company for the rest of his life, this would be the perfect time. This would be the very, very perfect time for him to announce that he's signed to AEW. Now, I feel like it's kind of a weird thing, but obviously being a masked superstar, how crazy would it be if I'm at Double or Nothing and CM Punk comes out in a wrestling mask only to hit a GTS and then reveal himself? And then, of course, all the information comes out that he signs to AEW. Now, again, that might be wishful thinking, but the fact that Tony Khan is mentioning that there's a lot of surprises being planned, he's very high on CM Punk, and with the news that came out through Meltzer that he was the original pick for AEW, what way to celebrate your very first pay-per-view by making history of CM Punk coming back into pro wrestling? I just altogether thought it was a very, very interesting thing. And again, you guys got to watch the video because his facial expressions, you can tell he knows something that we don't know. Now, he did talk a lot about the championships with AEW. He kind of alluded to the fact that he really wants to make them a big deal. So I'm absolutely happy to hear this news. He wants to make these title belts very prestigious. He says even within his 5-year plan, these belts will be the ones that everybody wants to go for, regardless of the company they're in. So the idea here, guys, we've talked about AEW being a sport-centric show. What it sounds like Tony Khan is alluding to, and he's making it very clear that these title belts will actually mean something, and it will absolutely mean something in the wrestling world if you are a contender for one of these belts. We know that there's going to be multiple championships in the company. He did confirm that, but as of right now, at Double or Nothing, there is no official AEW title match, and that's pretty much it. You know, the AAA tag titles are being defended, but as of right now, at this moment, we don't know if there's going to be any championship belt reveal, but we know there's going to be several of them. So my question to you guys today is, who do you think will become the first ever AEW World Champion? And also tell me what you guys may predict for the additional title belts. Now, me personally, I think there's going to be a World Championship, one mid-card title, as well as one tag team championship and one women's title. And specifically, the mid-card title, I don't really know. So that's why I want you guys to leave your comments down below, because I can't think of what AEW can do. I don't want to see Intercontinental, obviously. I don't want to see United States Championship. I want to see something new, something, very, very different from what we've seen. And I was hoping that maybe AEW can do something similar to what Impact did with the X Division, but I still can't put it together. So if you guys had the chance to name the AEW mid-card title, tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. And as always, guys, my name is Tony from Destination Pro Wrestling. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.
You have arrived at your destination.